Taiyul adjusted the environmental settings in the human laboratory for the fifth time. His guest, Lieutenant Hannah of the Stellar Consortium, peered through her specialized ocular enhancers at the incubator unit. "And this maintains the optimal temperature for your offspring?" she asked, her iridescent skin shifting through shades of curiosity. "Actually, this is for cell cultures," Taiyul explained. "Human babies develop inside the mother for 9 months. After birth, we use different equipment." He guided her to the Family Sciences wing where a display showed standard human nursery items. Hannah's skin flashed bright yellow, the universal sign of shock among her species. "Wait, humans really use that thing for breeding?" she exclaimed, pointing at a simple wooden crib. "Where are the genetic optimization chambers? The neural development units?" Taiyul smiled. "We just use blankets and love. Mostly. Part 2. Biological mysteries. Impossible," Hannah muttered, reviewing the genetic sequencing data. "Your species maintains such diversity without intervention." Jai-Ho, the human geneticist, nodded. "Natural selection has advantages engineered populations often lose." Their discussion was interrupted as the laboratory's emergency system activated. 3 consortium scientists had collapsed, their systems overwhelmed by what humans considered a minor seasonal pathogen. While the consortium's medical team struggled with solutions, Jai-Ho quietly synthesized a treatment based on human immune responses. Within hours, the aliens recovered. Hannah observed with newfound respect. "Perhaps your primitive biology deserves more study." Part 3. Evolutionary advantages. The Consortium Council requests immediate access to human genetic material, announced Commander Du Yun, Hannah's superior. "For what purpose?" asked Sun Mei, Earth's diplomatic representative. "Your species' adaptability could provide military advantages." The meeting tensed until Hannah intervened. "Commander, I believe we're approaching this incorrectly. Human biological systems aren't resources to harvest. They're complete ecological models we've forgotten." Outside, a sudden atmospheric disturbance threatened the compound structures. While consortium members retreated to safety chambers, the humans worked tirelessly through physical strain that would have incapacitated engineered species, securing critical equipment and protecting both human and alien personnel. Part 4. Ancient Wisdom. "It's not just their genetic variability," Hannah explained to the Consortium Council. "Human reproduction preserves evolutionary pathways we engineered away millennia ago." The holographic displays showed the spreading interstellar pathogen, already devastating 3 engineered species, but barely affecting humans. "Their imperfections are their strength," she continued. "Each human birth allows for micro-adaptations our populations haven't experienced in thousands of years." Minho, the human biologist, stepped forward. "We don't claim superiority, only difference. Sometimes evolution preserves what technology discards." The council deliberated while reports arrived of more consortium worlds falling to the pathogen. Part 5. Galactic Paradigm Shift. Yunji completed the final sequence, her sleepless nights evident in her eyes. "The treatment derives from human pregnancy hormones, specifically those that prevent mothers' immune systems from rejecting genetically different offspring." Hannah translated this to the consortium representatives, whose expressions shifted from skepticism to wonder. As the treatment spread throughout galactic networks, the consortium publicly acknowledged humanity's contribution. What they had dismissed as primitive biology had preserved the very adaptability the galaxy now needed. "We re-engineered ourselves toward perfection," Hannah addressed the combined human consortium research team, "while humans embraced their beautiful imperfections. Perhaps true advancement lies somewhere between." Taiyul smiled as he watched alien and human researchers working side by side. A wooden crib now displayed prominently in the laboratory as a symbol of unexpected wisdom. Lieutenant Hannah stepped off the transport vessel, her iridescent skin rippling with shades of blue and green that reflected her mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was her first assignment to Earth, a planet considered barely civilized by stellar consortium standards. As the designated xenobiologist for the diplomatic mission, she was tasked with studying human biology and determining if the species held any value to the greater galactic community. The air felt strange against her respiratory membranes, heavier, filled with unfamiliar particles. Earth's gravity pulled at her body with slightly more force than her home world. She adjusted her environmental suit slightly, though the humans had assured the delegation that their atmosphere was compatible with consortium physiology. Dr. Tae-yul Kim waited at the edge of the landing platform. Unlike the other humans who stared openly at the alien visitors, he maintained a professional composure. His credentials as Earth's leading reproductive biologist had earned him the position of liaison to the consortium's scientific team. "Welcome to the Seoul Scientific Institute," he said with a slight bow. "I trust your journey was comfortable." Hannah's translator converted his speech to the mathematical patterns her species used for communication. She responded with a formal greeting gesture, extending her 6 slender fingers in the traditional fan pattern. "The journey was acceptable. I am eager to begin our research exchange." Tae-yul nodded. "Of course. We've prepared the laboratory wing according to your specifications. Would you like to rest first, or should we proceed directly to the facility tour?" Hannah's skin flickered with amber, the color of determination. "I prefer to begin immediately. My superiors are particularly interested in understanding how your species has managed to maintain genetic viability despite your limited technological development." If Tae-yul was offended by her assessment, he didn't show it. "This way, please." They walked through corridors filled with human researchers who tried, with varying degrees of success, not to stare at Hannah's translucent skin and the visible circulatory fluids that pulsed beneath it. The consortium had been aware of Earth for nearly 50 years, but had only recently decided the planet merited direct contact. Most humans had never seen a member of an advanced species in person. "This is our main research laboratory," Tae-yul explained as they entered a large room filled with equipment that Hannah immediately recognized as primitive, though functional. "We focus primarily on reproductive medicine and genetic research here." Hannah moved to examine what appeared to be some sort of containment unit. "Is this your genetic optimization chamber?" Tae-yul looked confused. "No, that's an incubator for cell cultures. We use it to grow tissue samples in controlled conditions." Hannah's skin rippled with confusion. "Then where do you optimize your offspring's genetic structure?" "We don't, at least not routinely," Tae-yul explained. "Human reproduction remains largely natural, though we do offer screening for serious genetic disorders for parents who choose it." "Natural." Hannah's skin flashed pale yellow in shock. "You mean random genetic recombination, without correction?" Tae-yul nodded. "Most human children are conceived and developed without technological intervention." Hannah struggled to process this information. The consortium had abandoned unassisted reproduction thousands of years ago. The inefficiency and unpredictability of natural genetic combination had been deemed primitive once technology allowed for precise genetic selection. "I would very much like to understand your reproductive systems more thoroughly," she said. "The consortium finds it difficult to believe a species could advance to space travel while maintaining such biological randomness." Tae-yul led her through several more research areas, explaining various aspects of human medical science. Hannah noted that despite their technological limitations, humans had developed surprisingly sophisticated understanding of their own biology. "This next section might interest you," Tae-yul said, leading her into a different wing. "This is our family sciences department, where we study human development from infancy through adulthood." The room contained displays of what appeared to be human living environments, including models of various structures Hannah couldn't identify. One display featured a small wooden box on legs with soft fabric inside. "What is the purpose of this containment unit?" she asked, examining the strange structure. "That's a crib," Tae-yul explained. "Human infants sleep in them during their first year or two of life." Hannah's skin rapidly cycled through colors of confusion and disbelief. "Wait, Humans really use that thing for breeding. She extended a slender finger toward the wooden structure. Where are the neural development accelerators? The cognitive enhancement field generators. Taiyul smiled slightly. We don't use those. Human babies develop naturally, with parental care and stimulation. This crib is just where they sleep when they're very small. Hannah moved closer to the display, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial shock. You place your genetic future in wooden boxes, without monitoring systems. Well, many modern cribs do have monitoring systems for safety, Taiyul clarified. But essentially, yes. Human children develop through interaction with their environment and caregivers, not through technological enhancement. Hannah's skin settled into a deep purple of intense focus, and this approach produces viable offspring capable of learning complex tasks. It's produced every human you see, Taiyul said with a slight smile, including those who developed faster-than-light travel mathematics and quantum communication. Hannah carefully recorded this information in her data unit. The consortium had dismissed Earth as a curiosity, a planet where intelligent life had developed but remained tied to biological limitations. Now she wondered if perhaps they had overlooked something important. I would like to learn more about your developmental processes, she said. The consortium has utilized genetic engineering and artificial development systems for so long that we have little data on natural biological processes. Taiyul nodded. We have extensive research I can share, though I admit I'm equally curious about your species methods. Hannah's skin flickered with blue spots, the indication of a new hypothesis forming. Perhaps that is why the Consortium Council sent me here. We have optimized our genetics for so long, we may have lost understanding of the natural processes that created our species initially. She looked again at the simple wooden crib. What had at first seemed primitive now appeared as something more complex, a symbol of a different approach to existence. As a scientist, she couldn't dismiss the results. Humans had achieved remarkable advancement despite, or perhaps because of, their connection to biological processes the consortium had long abandoned. Dr. Kim, I believe this research exchange may be more valuable than either of our species initially understood. Hannah's 6 slender fingers moved carefully over the holographic display, turning the human DNA strand in 3 dimensions. 3 days had passed since her arrival on Earth, and she had barely left the laboratory. The genetic sequences before her told a story that contradicted everything the stellar consortium believed about evolutionary advancement. This makes no sense, she murmured to herself, her skin flickering with orange pulses of frustration. Such inefficiency. Dr. Jaiho Park entered the laboratory, carrying 2 steaming cups. The human geneticist had been assigned to work directly with Hannah, and despite their differences, she found his insights surprisingly valuable. I brought you tea, he said, placing 1 cup near her workstation. You've been studying that same sequence for 6 hours. Hannah's skin rippled with acknowledgement. Human reproductive genetics are puzzling. Your species maintains such diversity without intervention. The consortium would consider this dangerous. Jaiho smiled slightly. Yet here we are, having developed space travel, quantum physics, and art that your people find beautiful. Perhaps inefficiency has advantages. Perhaps, Hannah admitted, taking the cup with careful movements. The hot liquid was one Earth custom she had come to appreciate. But your offspring develop with so many random variables. No optimization. No removal of potential weaknesses. Jaiho sat beside her. Natural selection has served us well. Genetic diversity helps us adapt. When disease strikes, some humans always prove resistant. The consortium eliminated disease centuries ago, Hannah countered. All diseases you knew about, Jaiho said quietly. But what about the ones you haven't encountered yet? Before Hannah could respond, the laboratory's emergency system activated. Red lights flashed along the walls, and a calm voice announced, "Medical alert. Biohazard detected in the diplomatic wing. All personnel initiate Containment Protocol 3. Jaiho immediately stood. That's the visitor quarters. My people, Hannah said, her skin turning pale blue with alarm. They rushed through the corridors toward the diplomatic wing. Security personnel in hazard suits were already establishing a perimeter when they arrived. Through the transparent barriers, Hannah could see 3 consortium members collapsed on the floor, their normally translucent skin darkened to an unhealthy gray. What happened? She demanded of the human security officer. Unknown pathogen response, the officer replied. They began showing symptoms 30 minutes ago. Our medical team is inside, but they're struggling to understand the physiology. Hannah felt fear pulse through her circulatory system. I need to enter. I know their biology. Too dangerous until we identify the pathogen, the officer said firmly. Jai-Ho touched Hannah's arm lightly. We have samples being analyzed now. Come to the medical lab. We'll work faster with your knowledge. In the medical laboratory, human scientists moved with urgent purpose. A senior doctor approached them. Dr. Park, we've isolated the pathogen. It appears to be a variant of a common Earth rhinovirus, what we call a cold virus. Hannah's skin flashed yellow with shock. A common Earth microorganism. Impossible. The consortium screened for all known pathogens. This variant wasn't in your database, the doctor explained. It's harmless to humans. We carry it without symptoms. But in your people's biology, their immune systems have no reference for it, Jai-Ho realized. They've engineered disease resistance for known threats, but this is completely novel to them. Hannah processed this information rapidly. The consortium hasn't faced a natural pathogen in generations. Our immune systems are designed, not adapted. While the consortium's medical teams sent from the orbiting ship struggled with solutions based on their advanced but specialized knowledge, Jai-Ho quietly began working on a different approach. Hannah watched as he combined human immune factors with synthetic compounds. What are you doing? She asked. Human immune systems encounter thousands of new pathogens throughout our lives, Jai-Ho explained, not looking up from his work. We develop responses not through engineering but through exposure. I'm trying to give your people's systems a template based on our natural responses. Hannah observed with increasing interest. The consortium believes designed immunity is superior to known threats, yes, Jai-Ho agreed. But nature has had billions of years to develop flexible response systems. Sometimes older methods have advantages. 4 hours later, Jai-Ho had synthesized a treatment based on human immune responses. The compound was administered to the sick consortium members, and within hours, their skin began returning to its normal translucent state. Hannah stood by their recovery beds, her skin pulsing with deep blue relief. Commander Du-Yun, the senior consortium official, looked up at her weakly. How were we infected? Our protective measures are perfect. Perfect against known threats, Hannah replied. This was a human virus our systems had never encountered. And yet the humans walk around unaffected, Du-Yun observed. Their immune systems adapt naturally, Hannah explained. What we considered primitive biology protected them from something our advanced systems couldn't recognize. Later, Hannah returned to the laboratory where Jai-Ho was documenting the treatment process. Her skin had settled into a thoughtful purple hue. Your people saved mine today, she said simply. Jai-Ho shrugged. We just applied what we know about our own biology. The same biology the consortium considers inefficient and primitive, Hannah noted. Perhaps, she hesitated, the concept forming slowly. Perhaps what we see as perfection has limitations we never considered. She moved to the genetic display she'd been studying earlier, seeing it with new perspective. The consortium engineered away genetic variation for efficiency and to eliminate disease. But we also engineered away our ability to respond to the unknown. Evolution works slowly but thoroughly, Jai-Ho said. Natural selection preserves the adaptations that work across millions of variables, including ones we haven't yet encountered. Hannah's skin rippled with the deep green of profound realization. Your reproduction, the primitive methods I questioned, preserves this adaptability. Every human birth allows for micro-adaptations, Jai-Ho confirmed. Not always perfect, sometimes with challenges, but always with possibilities. The data terminal chimed with an incoming message from the Consortium High Command, requesting immediate information about the pathogen incident. Hannah looked at the message, then at the human genetic sequences still rotating on the display. "I need to report that the situation was successfully managed," she said carefully. "But I believe my research into human reproductive biology deserves much more attention than previously allocated." Jaiho smiled slightly. "Perhaps your primitive humans have something valuable to offer after all." Hannah's skin flashed briefly with colors humans couldn't perceive, a private acknowledgement of a paradigm shifting. "Perhaps indeed, though I still find your wooden baby containers perplexing." Commander Duyan stood tall and imposing in the conference room of the Seoul Scientific Institute. His fully recovered skin now glowed with the bright green of authority as he addressed the gathered human and consortium representatives. "The Consortium High Command requests immediate access to human genetic material," he announced without preamble. His translator conveyed the mathematical patterns of his speech into Korean and English simultaneously. "Specifically, we require samples from diverse human population groups with complete reproductive histories." Sun-Mi Lee, Earth's chief diplomatic representative, leaned forward slightly. "For what purpose, Commander?" "Your species' adaptability has been noted," Du-Yan replied, his skin remaining steadily green. "The recent pathogen incident has raised questions about potential applications for consortium interests." "Applications?" Sun-Mi asked carefully. "Could you be more specific?" "Military advantages," Du-Yan stated bluntly. "Your biological resilience could be integrated into our defense systems." The room grew tense. The human representatives exchanged concerned glances, while the consortium members maintained their characteristic stillness. Hannah, standing slightly behind Commander Do-Yan, felt her skin involuntarily flash with purple discomfort, but she quickly controlled it back to a neutral blue. 2 weeks of intensive study had given her insights her superior lacked, insights that made his request seem dangerously simplistic. Jaiho caught her eye from across the table, raising an eyebrow slightly. He had been working closely with her, and they had developed an unexpected rapport. "Commander," Hannah said, stepping forward, "I believe we're approaching this incorrectly." Du-Yan's skin darkened with displeasure at the interruption. "Explain." "Human biological systems aren't resources to harvest," Hannah said carefully. "They're complete ecological models we've forgotten. Our research indicates their genetic diversity functions as an interconnected system. Isolating components would likely prove ineffective." Before Du-Yan could respond, the building's emergency system activated. A calm voice announced, "Atmospheric disturbance alert. Category 4 storm approaching. All personnel move to designated secure areas." Through the large windows, they could see dark clouds gathering with unusual speed. The Seoul Institute's weather modification system had failed to disperse the sudden storm, a rare occurrence that spoke to its intensity. "The diplomatic shuttles must be secured," Du-Yan ordered immediately, "and our scientific equipment cannot be exposed to electromagnetic disturbances." What happened next surprised Hannah deeply. While the consortium members moved quickly toward their designated safety chambers, the humans organized themselves with remarkable efficiency. Despite being physically weaker and lacking the consortium's enhanced abilities, they began rapidly securing critical equipment, including the valuable consortium technology. Sun-Mi directed teams through the worsening conditions as the storm's leading edge hit the compound. Wind howled against the reinforced windows, and the lights flickered ominously. Jaiho appeared beside Hannah, his lab coat already soaked from an excursion outside. "The shuttles are secured, but the atmospheric sampling arrays are still exposed on the east platform. We need to retrieve them before the main storm hits." "Those units contain sensitive consortium technology," Hannah noted, her skin pulsing with concern. "But the platform will be dangerous now." "Yes," Jaiho agreed simply, and then headed toward the east exit. Hannah followed him, surprised by her own decision. Outside, the wind nearly knocked her over despite her denser muscle structure. Rain struck her sensitive skin like tiny needles, and warning indicators flashed across her optical enhancers. The atmospheric arrays stood at the edge of the platform, already straining against their moorings. Jiho reached them first and began disconnecting the primary sensors. Hana joined him, her 6 fingers working quickly despite the punishing conditions. This strain would incapacitate most consortium citizens, she shouted over the wind. How are you functioning? Jiho smiled through the rain streaming down his face. Humans are built to endure discomfort. Natural selection favored those who could push through pain when necessary. As they worked, Hana observed how Jiho's muscles trembled with exertion but continued functioning. His respiratory rate had increased, his body automatically compensating for the increased demands. No consortium citizen would voluntarily subject themselves to such physical strain. Their engineered biology was designed for optimal performance in controlled conditions. When they finally returned inside with the equipment, they found Commander Du Yan emerging from a protective chamber. The storm's electromagnetic field is disrupting communications, he announced. We've lost contact with our orbital vessel. The Institute's backup systems are operational, Sun Nai assured him, her clothes still wet from her own excursion outside. Your equipment and personnel are safe. Do Yan's skin registered surprise as he observed the secured consortium technology. You retrieved our atmospheric arrays. Dr. Park led the effort. Hana explained, her skin showing colors of respect, rarely displayed toward non-consortium members. Later, as the storm continued to batter the facility, Hana found Jiho in the laboratory, already analyzing data despite his obvious fatigue. You should rest, she told him. Your body requires recovery time after such exertion. Soon, he agreed. But I noticed something interesting in the pathogen samples. The storm's electromagnetic interference is actually revealing new patterns in the interaction between the virus and human immune factors. Hana joined him at the display. You continue working despite physical discomfort. It's what humans do, Jiho said simply. We adapt to circumstances. Sometimes that means pushing beyond normal limits. The consortium engineered such limitations out of our biology, Hana said thoughtfully. We function at optimal capacity under specific conditions, but struggle with variables outside our parameters. Jiho nodded. That's the trade-off. Your people chose specialization and efficiency. Humans maintained adaptability and resilience, even though it's less efficient. Later that evening, when the storm had passed, Hana prepared her report for the consortium high command. She carefully considered her words as she described the day's events. Human physical adaptability extends beyond mere genetic diversity, she wrote. Their biological systems maintain flexibility that allows function under diverse and unpredictable conditions. What initially appears as primitive inefficiency reveals itself as evolutionary strategy optimized for survival rather than performance. She paused, considering the implications of her next statement, then continued. I recommend against the simple extraction of genetic material. Human adaptability appears to emerge from their complete biological systems, including their seemingly primitive reproductive methods. Further study is required to understand these adaptive mechanisms before any application attempts. Commander Du Yan reviewed her report with his skin shifting through skeptical patterns. You suggest these humans have evolutionary advantages over the consortium. Not advantages in all contexts, Hana clarified. But their biological systems have preserved capabilities we engineered away centuries ago. Today demonstrated that clearly. No consortium citizen could have functioned effectively in those storm conditions without extensive technological support. Do Yan's skin darkened. The High Command will not welcome this assessment. Nevertheless, Hana replied, her skin steady and resolved. It is scientifically accurate. As she left the commander's quarters, she found Jiho waiting in the corridor. Your report won't be popular with your superiors, he said quietly. Hana's skin rippled with the complex pattern that indicated acceptance of an uncomfortable truth. Science isn't about popularity. It's about observation and evidence. An evolutionary advantage of a different kind. Jai-ho noted with a slight smile. Hannah stood before the holographic display, manipulating data patterns with graceful movements of her 6 fingers. 1 month into her Earth assignment, she had transformed her small laboratory into a hybrid of human and consortium technology. Data from both civilizations flowed across screens in complementary patterns that few from either species could fully comprehend. "You've been working through the night again," Jai-ho said as he entered, carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. Hannah's skin rippled with acknowledgement, the blue-green pattern indicating focused intensity. The data patterns became clear during the quiet hours. "Look at this." Jai-ho set down the cups and studied the display. It showed genetic comparisons between humans and 3 other species from the Consortium Alliance, focusing specifically on immune response patterns. "The pathogen that affected your people has now been reported on Nexus Prime and Talon 3, Hannah explained. "Both worlds report similar symptoms to what your Earth virus caused in our delegation. But those are different species entirely," Jai-ho noted with concern. "Nexus beings are silicon-based, and Talon organisms have triple helix DNA." "Yes," Hannah said, her skin pulsing with the deep purple of discovery. "Yet all 3 affected species share one common trait: extensive genetic engineering over thousands of years." She manipulated the display to show historical genetic records from the Consortium archives. "Analyzing data from the crisis, I've discovered something troubling. Millennia of genetic optimization has left most advanced species vulnerable to certain threats." Jai-ho leaned closer to the display. "You're saying advanced species engineered out their natural defenses?" "Not intentionally," Hannah clarified, "but over generations, as we removed genes for disease susceptibility, physical limitations, and developmental variations, we also removed genetic pathways that provided adaptability to unknown threats." She brought up another display showing human genetic structures. "Your imperfections and genetic variation have preserved solutions to problems the galaxy's oldest civilizations engineered out of existence long ago." Jai-ho sat heavily in a nearby chair. "So this pathogen is spreading rapidly through engineered populations across 3 sectors," Hannah confirmed, her skin now showing bands of orange concern, "while humans remain entirely unaffected." A soft chime interrupted their conversation, Commander Du-Yan requesting entry. When admitted, the consortium leader's skin displayed the formal patterns of official business. "Lieutenant Hannah, your findings have been transmitted to High Command," he stated. "They have instructed me to inform you that Earth will be designated a quarantine zone effective immediately." "Quarantine?" Jai-ho questioned. "But humans aren't affected by the pathogen." "Precisely why containment is necessary," Du-Yan replied, his skin unreadable in the formal diplomatic pattern. "High Command believes human biological material may be valuable, but cannot risk further spread of unknown pathogens." Hannah's skin flashed with rare colors of outrage before she controlled herself. "Commander, with respect, that decision demonstrates exactly the problem I've identified in my research. The consortium is viewing human biology as both threat and resource rather than as a complete ecological system with lessons to offer. High Command has made its decision," Du-Yan stated firmly. "The consortium vessel will depart orbit in 24 hours. All personnel must return before departure." After he left, Jai-ho looked at Hannah with concern. "They're abandoning Earth." "Worse," Hannah said quietly. "They're abandoning the knowledge your species preserved. Knowledge that could save billions." In the hours that followed, Hannah worked with feverish intensity, analyzing data from infected worlds and comparing it with human genetic responses. Jai-ho brought in other human scientists, including Minho, a brilliant biologist specializing in evolutionary genetics. "Look at this sequence," Minho said, pointing to a section of human DNA. "It appears inactive in modern humans, but it's preserved in our genetic code from ancestors who survived ancient pandemics. Your species engineered these sections out completely." "Deemed unnecessary," Hannah confirmed, her skin showing the deep blue of regret. The consortium believed those sections were evolutionary leftovers with no purpose. Evolution rarely preserves truly useless components, Minho observed. Natural selection is surprisingly efficient over long time frames. As they worked, reports arrived hourly of more consortium worlds detecting cases of the pathogen. The quarantine strategy was failing as quickly as it had been implemented. Hannah received a private communication from her homeworld, her family group expressing concern for her safety and urging her immediate return. The message contained something else. Classified medical data showing her family members already showing early symptoms of the pathogen. Her skin drained to pale gray as she processed this information. The disease was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, even reaching her home planet despite its distance from initial outbreak sites. "What is it?" Jai-Ho asked, noting her distress. "The pathogen has reached my homeworld," she said simply. "My family unit." Jai-Ho placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a human gesture of comfort she had come to understand. "Then we need to work faster." Near midnight, as most of the Institute staff had gone to rest, Minho burst into the laboratory, his eyes wide with excitement. "I think I found something," he announced, transferring data to the main display. "Human placental development may be the key." Hannah studied the information, her scientific focus overriding her personal concerns. "Explain." During pregnancy, human mothers carry offspring with different genetic codes, half from the father. Minho explained. "This should trigger an immune rejection, but specific hormones prevent this. These same mechanisms might help engineered species recognize the pathogen without rejecting their own engineered systems." Hannah's skin shifted through colors of rapid calculation. "The consortium hasn't experienced natural reproduction in thousands of years. We wouldn't have preserved these mechanisms. But the principles could be adapted," Jai-Ho suggested. "If we could synthesize the key compounds." Through the night they worked, combining human biological knowledge with consortium technology. By morning, they had developed a theoretical treatment based on principles derived from human reproductive biology. When Commander Du-Yan arrived to collect the consortium delegation, he found Hannah standing firmly beside her human colleagues. "I request permission to remain on Earth and continue this research," she stated formally. Du-Yan's skin showed genuine surprise. "High Command has ordered all personnel to return." "The quarantine." "Cannot work," Hannah interrupted, her skin displaying the formal pattern of scientific testimony. "The pathogen has already spread too far. But these humans have developed a potential treatment based on their reproductive biology. Knowledge our civilization discarded millennia ago." She transferred their research data to his personal unit. "Your family on Central World, are they showing symptoms yet?" Du-Yan's skin flickered with personal concern before returning to formal patterns. "That is not relevant, To." "It is entirely relevant," Hannah insisted. "This pathogen threatens all engineered species, not because humans are carrying something dangerous, but because we engineered ourselves into vulnerability while they preserved ancient defenses." Minho stepped forward. "We don't claim superiority, only difference. Sometimes evolution preserves what technology discards." Du-Yan studied the data, his skin gradually shifting to the deep green of reluctant understanding. "High Command will not easily accept treatment principles derived from primitive biology." "Then they will watch billions suffer," Hannah said simply, "while the solution remains in the biological wisdom humans never abandoned." 3 months after the first outbreak, Young-ji watched her computer screen with tired eyes. She hadn't slept properly in days. Around her, the combined human consortium laboratory hummed with activity, a collaboration that would have seemed impossible just months ago. "Final sequence complete," she announced, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. The room fell silent as everyone turned toward her workstation. Hannah moved to Young-ji's side, her translucent skin glowing with anticipation. Commander Du-Yan approached from the other side, his once rigid formality now softened by necessity and experience. "The treatment works?" he asked simply. Young-ji nodded, bringing up the simulation results on the main display. The synthetic compounds derived from human pregnancy hormones show a 97% effectiveness rate across all tested engineered species. Explain again how this works, requested one of the consortium scientists who had arrived last month as the crisis deepened. Hana gestured to Yunji, acknowledging her as the primary researcher. The human woman stood and faced the gathered team. During human pregnancy, a mother carries a child with different genetic material, half from the father. Yunji explained. This should trigger her immune system to reject the baby as foreign tissue, but specific hormones prevent this rejection while still allowing her body to fight actual threats. She brought up an image of a human placenta. This organ creates a perfect balance, allowing two genetically different organisms to coexist without harming each other. We've synthesized the key compounds that manage this balance. And these work for non-human biology? Asked another scientist skeptically. Modified versions do, Yunji confirmed. The treatment essentially teaches engineered immune systems to recognize the pathogen without triggering the cascade failure we've seen in affected populations. Du Yan's skin shifted through patterns of deep thought. The consortium has not experienced natural reproduction in thousands of years. We eliminated the biological mechanisms you've described as inefficient, and in doing so, lost ancient wisdom built into your genetic heritage. Jaiho added quietly. Sometimes what looks like primitive biology actually contains solutions developed over millions of years of evolution. The laboratory communications system chimed with an incoming transmission. The large screen activated to show the Consortium High Council, the ruling body that had initially ordered Earth's quarantine. Their formal skin patterns indicated the gravity of the situation. Commander Du Yan, the lead counselor, began. Our medical stations report catastrophic infection rates on 17 core worlds. Our engineered defenses have proven inadequate. Does Earth offer any solution? Du Yan stepped forward. Yes, counselor. Human scientists, working with our research team, have developed a treatment based on principles derived from their reproductive biology. There was a visible ripple of color changes among the council members, indicating surprise, skepticism, and in some cases, distaste. You propose we adopt treatments derived from unengineered biological processes. One member questioned, skin flickering with doubt. Hana moved to stand beside Du Yan. Counselors, I have studied human biology extensively. What we once dismissed as primitive actually represents evolutionary wisdom, our civilization engineered away millennia ago. She transmitted the research data to the council. The treatment derives from human pregnancy hormones, specifically those that prevent mothers' immune systems from rejecting genetically different offspring while maintaining defense against actual threats. The council fell silent, examining the data. The lead counselor's skin gradually shifted to the deep green of reluctant acceptance. Begin immediate production and distribution, she ordered finally. All available resources are authorized. Over the following weeks, treatment facilities were established across consortium space. Yunji found herself traveling to 3 different worlds to oversee implementation, accompanied by Hana as translator and scientific partner. The sight of human scientists being welcomed as saviors on advanced worlds created a surreal inversion of the relationship that had existed just months earlier. On the 3rd world, a crystalline planet of breathtaking beauty, Yunji watched as the first patients received the treatment. Among them were members of Hana's family unit, their skin already darkened by the disease. Will they recover completely? Yunji asked quietly as they observed from behind a safety field. The treatment arrived early for them, Hana replied, her skin showing cautious optimism. Full recovery is expected. I'm glad, Yunji said simply. Later, as they prepared to return to Earth, a formal delegation from the Consortium High Council met them at the spaceport. The lead counselor herself had traveled to deliver an unprecedented announcement. The consortium hereby acknowledges humanity's contribution to galactic stability, she stated formally to the assembled officials and media. What we previously classified as primitive biology has preserved evolutionary wisdom, the galaxy now depends upon. She turned specifically to Yunji. Your work has saved billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. The consortium offers formal alliance status to Earth, effective immediately. The journey back to Earth was filled with celebrations and planning. Hana sat quietly beside Yunji as their ship approached the blue planet. Your world looks different to me now, Hana admitted, her skin showing colors of reflection. When I first arrived, I saw primitive biology and outdated reproduction. Now I see a reservoir of wisdom, my civilization nearly lost forever. 6 months after the crisis began, the Seoul Scientific Institute hosted a ceremony formally establishing the Galactic Biological Research Initiative, a joint program between humans and the consortium dedicated to studying natural biological processes for medical applications. Tai Yule, who had first welcomed Hana to Earth, stood beside her as they watched human and consortium scientists working side by side in the new facility. We re-engineered ourselves toward perfection, Hana addressed the combined teams, while humans embraced their beautiful imperfections. True advancement lies somewhere between. In the center of the main laboratory, a simple wooden crib had been placed as a symbolic reminder. What had once prompted Hana's shocked question, "Wait, humans really use that thing for breeding?" now stood as a symbol of unexpected wisdom. Yunji smiled as she noticed Hana's gaze lingering on the crib. "Still think it's primitive?" "No," Hana replied, her skin glowing with the warm colors of new understanding. "I think it's a perfect reminder that sometimes the oldest solutions are the wisest. Your species never forgot that a new life isn't something to be engineered to perfection. It's something to be nurtured through all its beautiful imperfections." Tai Yule nodded. "And in those imperfections lie the seeds of adaptation that saved us all." As the consortium ships departed Earth's orbit, they carried more than treatments and technology. They carried a profound shift in understanding that the path to advancement wasn't always through engineering away the past, but sometimes through preserving the ancient wisdom coded into life itself. And on countless worlds across the galaxy, children born in the years that followed would grow up learning the story of how humanity's primitive biology had preserved the solutions that saved advanced civilization from its own engineered perfection.